What's going on? What's crack-a-lackin', my peoples? How you doing? I'm Jerry Quickley, and this is happening. It's Friday. You made it. The man or woe man about to get their foot up off your neck, or perhaps their non-binary digit is going to be removed from your neck and free up for the weekend. Yes, it is Friday, November 30th, end of the month, but guess what? We have a really great show for you today. Yes, we do, because tomorrow, it's a celebration! Yes, it's a celebration tomorrow for the people of Mexico because they will have their first progressive democratic president in modern history. And it's been a long, slow, painful journey for the Mexican people to have their voices heard at the ballot office, at the ballot box, and it's finally occurred. Joining us today to discuss that will be Jon Ackerman, professor from UNAM in Mexico, the Autonomous University, and author of a new article in the Daily News about Trump's trouble on the southern border and whether or not AMLO is going to go along with it. All that and more. It's a big, big, big week. Indictments are pending any moment now. Earthquakes in Alaska. It's all going down. And I want to remind you that you can follow me online. Just go to YouTube and search for Jerry Quickley and just click on subscribe. When our channel comes up, we post multiple videos every day. Love having those chats and conversations with y'all all there. YouTube fight! Twitter fight! It's all going down. So go to YouTube, search for Jerry Quickley, and just hit subscribe. We'll let you know whenever we post new videos. You can also check us out on SoundCloud.com/TIH Live. Again, that's SoundCloud.com/TIH Live. And you can follow me using the handle at Jerry Quickley on Twitter. Again, that's at Jerry Quickley on Twitter. Oh, yes, we need to stay in touchy touch. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening right now. This is happening. And then we'll be right back taking your calls here at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. First up, let's give a listen to National Native News.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. First Nations leaders and government officials in Canada announced plans Friday to move forward on child welfare legislation. It aims to give First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities more control over the care of their children. In a press conference streamed by the CBC, Indigenous Services Minister Jane Philpott says this is one step in supporting Indigenous families.
This is part of the building blocks, as it were, in that going forward to see strong, healthy, self-reliant First Nations, Inuit governments, Métis governments is ultimately what Canada has been missing. But that will not come about until we acknowledge the great needs to heal families, to rebuild those strong bonds of family, to make sure that children are not ripped away from their language, their culture, their land, and their lineage. And so this is a critical step to supporting families.
Inuit leader Natin Obed says there needs to be provisions to acknowledge past challenges and change the way services have negatively impacted people.
We are hopeful that there will be a section that will acknowledge history, acknowledge the really challenging things such as the residential school period, the lack of self-determination that Indigenous peoples have had over time and all of its permutations. Hopefully there will be provisions around the rights of Indigenous children and how those rights in specific provisions in the Act can have remedy and redress for any violations to those children's rights. There also hopefully will be provisions around the self-determination space for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis governance.
Indigenous groups have been co-developing the legislation. Native leaders in support of it hope to have it in the books before Canada's federal election in October 2019. Monument Valley Tribal Park, which spans Utah and Arizona, well known for its mesas and buttes, often seen in photos and movies, closed Thursday. The Navajo Nation's Parks Department authorized the closure. The Navajo Times reports the park was shut down to the public after the group Global Witness was filming without a permit. 50 people reportedly protested the closure. In a YouTube video posted by the group, people joked about the incident, saying they're not a cult and they're there to see what secrets of the past the monuments and people hold. Local Navajo leaders in the area are concerned about the health and safety of the public. The park is on Navajo land and managed by the tribe. It's closed until further notice. Minnesota's governor-elect Tim Walz plans to visit the Red Lake Indian Reservation on Sunday and hold a community listening session. Lieutenant Governor-elect Peggy Flanagan is a citizen of the White Earth Nation. They both have been outspoken about Native American issues, veterans care, education, and health. The event will take place at the Red Lake Nation College. The transition team has started a statewide tour to meet with communities and discuss what priorities to tackle in the next year. The tour is also reportedly seeking members for the administration. The Fort Peck tribes in Montana will not accept a group of bison from Yellowstone National Park. The Billings Gazette reports an attorney for the tribe says there are too many burdensome conditions by the federal government. One concern is disease. The tribe wants more control over disease testing. Relocation efforts are trying to be made to prevent buffalo from being slaughtered. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
What's going on? What's crack-a-lackin', my peoples? How you doing? I'm Jerry Quickley, and this is happening. Could not be happier you're joining us today because this is the very last show that we will ever be doing on This Is Happening. Wait for it. Prior to AMLO being sworn in this weekend in Mexico. It's all going down. That's right. Some people's dreams potentially are being answered, and some people, maybe it'll be a nightmare. We don't know, but maybe if you like the old Mexico and the old economic system there, this is probably going to be your worst nightmare. At least we can only hope for that. As I said, AMLO is being sworn in this weekend, but this is happening amidst a tremendous amount of chaos on the southern border with all of these thousands and thousands of families and individuals being shut out of being able to even apply for asylum in the United States because of Trump's racist and exclusionary new one-person, one-man border policy that seeks to essentially make illegal U.S. laws of asylum. Well, exactly what's going down on the southern border in San Ysidro and what are some of the dynamics attached to that. Joining us today to discuss all this is Jon Ackerman. Jon is a professor at the Institute for Legal Research of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM. He's also the editor-in-chief of the Mexican Law Review and a columnist at Proceso magazine and La Jornada. And I understand his wife is going to be part of the anti-corruption brigade that is being installed after AMLO is installed this weekend. I couldn't be happier that Jon Ackerman is joining us today. Jon, how are you? Welcome to This Is Happening.
How you doing? Great to be on with you. A pleasure and honor.
So, Jon, right now, let's just cut to the chase. It strikes me that this is what's going on the southern border in San Ysidro and other places where Donald Trump has created what they're describing as a quote-unquote metering policy, and it's entirely capricious and arbitrary, is driven by racism, and it is creating a crisis where none exists, and the only way this crisis can be created is for Trump to literally, not essentially, but to literally suspend American and international laws of asylum. What the F is going on the southern border right now?
Well, yeah, it's really quite sad, quite angering. From the point of view from Mexico, it's particularly terrible. You know, Trump sent tear gas right across the border, has been militarizing the border with Mexico, which is a direct affront to national sovereignty. Imagine the Mexicans were to do the other way. Line up military soldiers along the border with the United States, throwing tear gas canisters into the United States side. Trump nor Americans would take this very lightly. Mexico's been, trying to not fall into the provocations of Trump, keep a sort of a rational view on this whole thing. and in general, support these migrants who are in the end looking for a better life. And the article I published, this was on Thursday, yesterday, in the New York Daily News, I talk about this a little bit. We need to put this all into historical context because, in Central America, where many of these migrants come from, is a war-torn area in many ways as a result of United States policies and direct military intervention. During the 70s and 80s, where there was, were civil wars, guerrilla warfare, people were fighting for their lives and, trying to achieve the independence of their countries. And now, these migrants are approaching the border, not in a violent approach, or not picking up arms to fight against the United States, but to the contrary. They just want to go to the United States and work, and many of them are families. We see these pictures of women and children. And so to respond to asylum requests and to respond to basically a good faith effort to contribute to the United States economy and to uplift their own families with tear gas and the military is basically an announcement that Trump could care less about, that thing called the American dream, right? But I guess the other side, the more positive side, as you mentioned, is that tomorrow in Mexico, this Saturday, December 1st, is a major historic day. This is going to be the first time in which we have a progressive, a forward-looking president for decades in Mexico, after Mexico has been left out of the so-called pink tie, all throughout Latin America, all these experimentations with different forms of leftist government, some more radical, others not so much, but a real sort of political response to neoliberalism. While in Mexico, we've been stuck in the Washington consensus, the neoliberal pro-big business so-called development models. I say so-called, it's not actually developing the country, for 30 years. And now finally, this Saturday, December 1st, we're going to start a new page in Mexican history. And this is really exciting and should, it would be really important for the progressives in the United States to really look south and see this as an inspiration and try to work together for social justice, not only in Mexico, not only in the United States, but in all of North America and the Americas in general.
Right. And let's, I want to talk a little bit about, try to capture some of what AMLO had meant to the people of Mexico, particularly at the moment of his election. And I'm going to do that by referencing some 10 years back when Obama was elected in the United States. I saw something, two things I thought I'd never seen in America. First, a black president. Beyond that, I also, what was really shocking to me, I'm still, a decade later, I'm still floored by it, is that I was driving around the city of Los Angeles that evening, and all over the city, there were parties. There were people spilling out of bars onto the street, celebrating the election of Barack Obama. I've never seen anything like that in my life before, since in this country. It really felt, for many people in this country, we know what has happened since, but it felt like a new moment and a new chance. What was the reaction on the street in Mexico upon the moment of AMLO's election, and what has the arc been since then?
Indeed, this is unprecedented. I mean, this should be what politics looks like in normal democracy. There should be a lot of excitement about the elections, and the person being winning should have big parties and lots of legitimacy. But just as in the United States, in Mexico, this is not normal, especially in the last 6, 12, 18 years. We have elections every 6 years. There's basically been, sadness and depression around most of the president's elections because of suspicions about electoral fraud, and because of people who have been winning, are not particularly popular. They've, gotten there by buying votes or by, spending a lot of money, but not actually by having charisma and leadership. And so this is one of the first times, like you're saying, when Obama came in. Although I think Lip Schroeder is going to do a better job than Obama.
We can only hope.
Yes, not only hope. I'm sure he'll do a better job than Obama. Well, but we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
It's complicated, but yes, this is a similar moment in terms of the fact, on July 1st, I was there. Millions of people were there in downtown Mexico City. It was a big party. There was a huge, spontaneous mobilization of citizens who were just incredibly happy about the election coming out as it had. Not only that he had won, but that there was a legitimate election. There wasn't a electoral fraud at the last minute. They were stealing ballots or anything. This was actually a democratic moment. And tomorrow we're going to have a similar moment. There's going to be, so López Obrador is going to get the formal ceremony in the National Congress, the swearing-in ceremony. They'll have a meeting in the National Palace with foreign leaders, and then he's going to go straight to the Zócalo, which is the central plaza, and give a speech and inaugurate a huge concert, which is going to be for hundreds of thousands of people who are coming down from all over the country just to celebrate the arrival of finally a legitimate progressive president in Mexico. And there's lots of excitement, lots of hope. His approval ratings have gone way up, right? So he was already popular. Of course, he won with 53% of the vote. The second place was 22%, so it was a real landslide. Took over both houses of Congress, the majority of the state legislatures as well. But since then, it's only been going up even more. So his approval ratings now are 60, 70%. If the elections were held again today, he would get over 60% of the vote. And so it's been a long transition period of 5 months from July 1st to December 1st. But he's, going strong, and it looks like he's getting a real vote of confidence from the Mexican people.
I want to remind our listeners that my guest is Jon Ackerman. He's a professor at the Institute for Legal Research of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and he's also the author of an article that was published in the New York Daily News yesterday, talking about AMLO, his election, and what awaits him. John, you said something now that I want to focus on. It's pretty interesting. You said that AMLO is the first progressive, legit presidential candidate in Mexico who's assumed power. Given that, and that's critical. That's critically important. Progressive, legitimate president of Mexico, and for the last 5 months, from the election in this transition period to when he takes office tomorrow, I'd like your analysis on American media's steadfast refusal to acknowledge the existence of AMLO in any meaningful way around U.S. policy. Because Trump has been running out this policy after policy after policy. I'm making these sweeping changes to NAFTA. I'm going to change this forever. There's going to be a 30-year deal. There's a 40-year deal. This is forever. And they're doing this with lame duck Nieto. And not only is Trump doing it, that's not that surprising. I'm shocked and floored at the level of racism and reactionary editorial policies in mainstream U.S. media that has allowed the mainstream America, the media, to essentially go down the same road with Trump and act as though AMLO doesn't exist and Nieto's going to be in forever, or act as though it's legitimate to have these major negotiations about the future of Mexico with a lame duck president. It is offensive. It is offensive that Trump did it. It's more offensive that U.S. media went for it. And what does it mean to the people of Mexico and AMLO that America, in terms of its media and political apparatus, has treated him as though he's non-existent and tried to stuff everything they could into their Christmas stockings with Nieto?
Very well said. I agree with you. This is very important. It is a scandal. The reason why today they signed this agreement, which is not definitive, it still has to be passed by the corresponding legislatures, Congress. The reason why I did today is because today is the last day of Peña Nieto as president. They should have all sides should have waited for López Obrador to arrive and then negotiate with him on board, and the U.S. media should have been pushing for that and aware of that, because, as you said, Peña Nieto is a lame duck president. Right now, actually, the Senate and the Congress, they've already taken power since September, the ones that were elected on July 1st, and we have majority Morena, which is López Obrador's party. So we'll have to see what happens to this agreement, man, because, as you said, Peña Nieto is signing it, but it has to get approved by the Mexican Senate. Now, apparently, they have been consulting with López Obrador. The transition team of López Obrador has been, had a seat at some of these negotiations. So the expectation seems to be in some circles that this will go through the Mexican Senate, but it's not at all certain, because the Morena senators are very independent, very progressive, and very critical of of NAFTA and what it's done to Mexico. So Trump complains about it supposedly hurting the United States, but in general, it's hurt the working class on both sides of the border. So we very well could be seeing a new renegotiation of this agreement if Mexico doesn't sign off on it. So we'll have to see what happens. And I think you will be hearing a lot about López Obrador. You haven't heard about it much because he's been a president-elect. He hasn't actually been in charge. But as of this Saturday, he's in charge, and he's going to be saying and doing lots of interesting things just towards Mexico, about Mexico, and also towards the United States that you guys are going to be hearing about. And as you said, it's very important to break through this smoke screen of the corporate media because they just lie over and over again. They're comparing López Obrador to foreign leaders which have nothing to do with him. So I don't even want to start talking about Chavez. Chavez has some wonderful things that he's done during many years. But there's some issues with the Venezuelan regime today, and the idea is that anybody who's trying to be progressive or do anti-neoliberal policies is suddenly going to be automatically authoritarian. And actually, what López Obrador is doing is constructing democracy in Mexico. What we had up till now is an authoritarian system. So Enrique Peña Nieto, few people know this, but threw hundreds of people into jail on political motives. So we had many more political prisoners in Mexico than in Venezuela, Russia, or anywhere else. This is a fully authoritarian country in which, when the students go out and protest in the streets, they get beaten up by the police. Provocateurs are sent in to throw Molotov cocktails to sort of give a good excuse for the police to come in and arbitrarily detain these students. There's all sorts of cases of human rights violations, massacres that have happened over the last few years. The 43 students who disappeared a few years ago. So, just that, regardless of ideology and neoliberalism, López Obrador is going to really start. This is now when democracy is going to start in 2018, not in the year 2000 with Coca-Cola exec Vicente Fox, who just turned his back on the Mexican people 2 months into power. López Obrador now is actually beginning the real democratic transition in Mexico today.
And let me ask you about something I read in the blogs. It's probably unfair for me to ask this question when I ask it anyway. My understanding is that Jared Kushner got this medal from the Order of the Aztec Eagle. I read in the blogs that AMLO was planning on taking back the medal, melting it down into nunchucks, and flogging Jared Kushner in the Zocalo in Mexico City with nunchucks made from the Aztec Eagle. Is that true?
No, I don't think that's true.
All right, good. I had to ask. I should stop reading Takashi's blog.
They gave him the medal, which is a total disgrace, and Mexicans are not happy about that. I'll bet the Americans aren't happy about that either. I mean, this is just it's ridiculous. I mean, Kushner, what official position does he have? None. It's just sort of Peña Nieto and Videgaray, our foreign secretary, paying him back for the supposed favors they've done for him and for the favors that he will probably do in the future. So, they've got probably some pretty deep files on Videgaray and Peña Nieto in terms of, money laundering, organized crime. I just don't even want to imagine the depths of the crime that this government has gotten into. And of course, if they had the protection of Trump and his family, that'll help them out. So it's an obvious kind of gesture in that direction. But López Obrador is not coming in, with looking for a fight with Trump. He is trying to convince and work with not Trump but the United States and the United States government on mutually beneficial policies to develop the whole region, but particularly southern Mexico and Central America, in order to stop migration. So in the end, giving people a right to stay where they are. If they want to migrate, they can migrate, but people shouldn't be forced to migrate because of poverty and violence. And if Trump were smart, that's a big assumption, he would he would accept this offer, because López Obrador is in the end offering to help stop migration, not through walls, not through militarization, but through development, jobs in southern Mexico and Central America. And so that would be a fascinating thing. So he's not looking for a fight. He's not going to do any kind of symbolic thing like that. In terms of Jared Kushner's medal, he doesn't care about that kind of stuff. He wants to get to work and and convince. I don't know. He's not going to be able to convince Trump, but at least convince. There's probably a bunch of legislators on Capitol Hill who might want to turn an ear to this and push the U.S. government towards more humane policies towards Central and South America. That would be an interesting shift.
Secretly, I'll still be dreaming of Kushner getting a nunchuck flogging. But that's just me because I'm petty. My guest for this segment has been Jon Ackerman. He's a professor at the Institute for Legal Research of the National Autonomous University of Mexico and author of a great new article published yesterday in the Daily News about the election of AMLO and Trump's fateful Mexico choice to is Trump going to work with the new president, or is he just going to hunker down and watch the border crisis grow? Required reading if you care about what's happening on our southern border. Jon Ackerman, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on This Is Happening.
Thank you so much. A real pleasure and an honor, and hope to talk to you again soon. And please pay attention to all the great stuff going on in Mexico. It's wonderful that you guys are interviewing me, interview other people. There's lots of fascinating stuff going on, and I think that it's a real inspiration even for U.S. politics and world politics, and let's work together for justice in North America.
Absolutely. I'm deeply inspired by what's going on there. I want to thank you so much for joining us and shedding light on it.
Thank you.
We're taking your calls here at 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. I'm Jerry Quickley. This is happening. I need my co-pilots to help me pilot this ship out of the swamp of racism, petulance, and petty dramas into the future we deserve, y'all.